So what are kind of the key things that investors should be aware of in terms of, buying buildings or, state municipal rules, etc., zoning? I mean, you've touched on some of these things. What would be like the top three things?
Yeah. So zoning is important, obviously. So I don't think we need to talk about that more because everyone realizes you have to be zoned for the business.
Right.
I think that you need to know your operator. So whoever's using the property, you need to understand who they are and what they are and how they account for their money, because we're dealing with an industry that can't be banked right now, or in very limited circumstances can be banked. So how are you going to collect your monthly payments? How are you going to monitor how much money is coming into the business? And you need to set up protocols ahead of time and make sure that those protocols are strictly followed. That is probably the biggest challenge if you're lending money in this field. The other thing is you got to make sure that your collateral is buttoned up and you're protected from the extreme circumstances, the government seizures, the bad actors, those types of things. I'll give you a really short example. We had a client who made a loan to a business, took the real estate as security. And there was an operator who had no idea that their business partner was laundering money and not doing what they were supposed to do and being transparent about it. Well, there was an investigation and the feds wanted to seize the property. Well, part of the blame lay with our client not setting up protocols in advance as to how to manage incoming cash, how to manage deposits, how to manage payments, all those types of things. We were able to work with the government to not have them seize the property and retain our rights and everything else, but it was something that could have been avoided, I think, had we set up protocols ahead of time. But we got the client after they had done the deal, not before. So those are the things that scare me the most as a lawyer. And then I think you need to understand your local government, and that the consultants help with that, because I'll give you a great example. Calaveras County, it allowed for outdoor grow. Then 2 years later, there was an election and the entire county council was replaced and they voted against it. So all these people that invested a ton of money, a ton of resources and everything else were now sitting there holding an empty bag because the county changed its mind on allowing cannabis to flourish, to even exist in their county. A year later, there was another election and then they went back to being cannabis friendly. So you have this flip-flop. And I think if you would have known ahead of time how Calaveras County has a history of going between, left and right, left and right, left and right, you may have thought twice about investing in that county. I think now the county is married to cannabis and they'll continue forward. But a few years ago, it was really up in the air.
Well, this kind of gets back to this first, point that we were talking about, is this political risk. Even not just on the national level, on the local level as well. All right, so let me ask you one final question. What kind of, are there any, what are the most common questions that you get when somebody walks in the door and they're interested somehow in investing in cannabis or getting involved in the industry in some way?
So it's a funny thing that you ask, because this happens to me almost regularly, which is, the question I get is usually in some sort of backwards negative. Like, there really is no risk for me if I do this, right? And I have to be very, very blunt and say, look, this is a risky industry. Not only do you have the risk of a bad investment or whatever, but you have a risk of your freedom and your property. If things really go sideways and there's a political change, you are now aiding and abetting a federal crime, and you have to be really cognizant of that, right? And you are also now putting your property at risk for federal seizure if you don't do things properly. So there is huge risk. Now, as lawyers, we can help you mitigate that risk, but we can't eliminate it altogether. There's no silver bullet right now to eliminate those two risks. And I'm very clear about that. The last thing I want to have anyone ever come back to me and say is, you said that I could do X and now I'm in trouble. I'm telling you, you mostly can't do X and you can't do Y and you can't do Z. But there is a narrow path between those three letters that you can navigate to be as safe as you possibly can. And the federal government has laws that allow for that kind of narrow path, but you have to follow it just with such discipline, and you have to just make sure that every time you turn your head, you're turning your head in the right direction.